Hi Mom, and welcome back to this video. So today I have a very special and honestly very vulnerable video for you guys. If you've watched me, I do kind of a mix of content. I do makeup content, I do funny content, but I also have these more serious videos that I call makeup and mental health, which is where I do my makeup while talking about a mental health topic. So far we've done episodes on schizoaffective disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder. But today I wanted to focus on something a little bit different, and the title of this video today is going to be called Psych Ward Survival Kit. A couple of disclaimers. I'm just gonna start doing my makeup, and the makeup part is just something to do with the hands, something soothing to watch while we talk about these serious subjects. So that's what we're gonna do. We've got a good mix of products to start with. So a couple of disclaimers. Number one, we're gonna be talking about the psych ward today, and this is a very vulnerable topic. This is something that is extremely stigmatized, and that is exactly the reason why I'm talking about it, because we need to break the stigma of mental health in order to get people the proper help for mental health. So if we talk about the hard things, then people can do the hard things a lot easier. So that's disclaimer number one. Disclaimer number two is if you clicked on this video and you're in an emergency, please click off of this video, and if you're in a mental health crisis, please go to your local hospital or call your local emergency services. I'm also going to have Kayla pop up the suicide hotline right here. If you found this video because you're in a mental health crisis, I'm glad you're here, but this is not the place to be, so please defer to those resources and come back when you are in a better place, and I love you. I'm going to be talking about my personal psych ward experience, but my experience doesn't translate to everybody's experience. I know some people who have had okay experiences in the psych ward, and I know some people who have had terrible experiences in the psych ward. It really just depends on where you go in your particular situation, and my experience is not everybody's experience. And I also was there a lot shorter of a time than a lot of people are, so I am not the expert. I'm just using my platform that I have, as small as it may be, to talk about something that I think is very important. And the third disclaimer is that I am not a doctor or a clinician of any kind. I do work in mental health, so I do have some experience there. This video is not to give anybody any kind of clinical advice. This is just a personal, anecdotal type of video. That's the tea on that. This is a very serious video, and I'm saying that's the tea. And I've got my coffee here this morning. Okay, so number one, let's talk about the psych ward. I have, at this current time, 5 diagnosed mental health disorders. And a lot of people would really balk at that and have balked at it and look at me completely different if I say something like that. Especially if you add, I have been actively to the psychiatric ward of the hospital. People tend to look at you like you're crazy. I am doing this to show you that I'm just a normal person with a normal life, with hobbies and activities and interests. I don't know why I said I have activities. I do activities. Who happened to need psychiatric care at one point. So we're just going to talk about my experience today, and we're gonna make it work. So I was in the psych ward about a year ago, and also I'm going to pop up a little trigger warning. We're going to be talking about suicidal ideation, so if that's a trigger for you, please click off of this video. And again, I love you and I hope that you are well. I was in a really bad place. I was working at a job that didn't value me, and I was working 12-hour days. I wasn't sleeping or eating, and I was really afraid of oversleeping, so I stopped taking my medicine because my medicine made me sleep more, and I thought, I'll be fine if I just stop taking this. It'll help me get up early in the morning and maybe I won't be late for work, because I was being late for work because I was having trouble with oversleeping because of the medicine. And I was getting in trouble a lot. I was getting written up a lot, and this job was just not giving me the time of day. They weren't trying to train me. They weren't trying to help me be better. They were just like, do what I tell you to do and do it right the first time. That was pretty much it. And I didn't do well in that environment. My panic was soaring. I was constantly miserable. I was wildly depressed. I was just in a bad place, and I felt bad about myself. My self-esteem was really, really low because I felt like I should be able to do this job well, and yet I can't. That was happening, and I got off my medications, and I've talked about it on my Facebook before that I think medication can be really important and really healing for some people. people, and I am one of those people. There's not a quality of life for me without medication, and that's just something that I've had to come to accept. And some people still may hear that and disagree with it. I think that medication is another one of those things that we need to get over our stigma of. Medication is the difference between life and death, or quality of life and no quality of life. Why should we have any problem with it? That's what I think. But anyway, this is what was going on. And I remember just getting in my car one day and I just felt nothing. I didn't feel anything at all. I felt no joy. I felt no pain. I felt no fear of pain. And I had the very disturbing thought that I wanted to crash my car. I remember thinking about it and it didn't scare me. But the thought that it didn't scare me did scare me. And so I got home and I ended up having a breakdown. I just ended up crying profusely, and my husband was like, "I've never seen you like this. I don't really know what to do." So I called my therapist, and she called me back and she basically said, "Haley, I think you need to check yourself into the hospital." So I went with nothing but the clothes on my back and my husband to support me. So we went, and let me tell you, going to the emergency room for suicidal ideation is very, very hard, because you have to say some very overwhelmingly vulnerable information to so many people. There are so many doctors and nurses and receptionists and people that are asking you why you're here. And it's so much easier to say, "Oh, I broke my leg," or "I'm having a stomach pain," than it is to say that I thought about hurting myself and that's why I'm here. And people just kind of look at you, and I don't think that they mean to. I don't think that they mean anything by it, but people are taken aback seeing a young girl sit there and saying, "Well, I wanted to take my own life and that's why I'm here." So that was very hard to get through that experience. And I remember thinking, I had the thought that, well, they'll put me in a bed overnight and then I can choose to go home in the morning. They'll just monitor me overnight and I can choose to go home in the morning. And now looking back on that, I realize how silly that is. And if you've ever been to the psych ward, you're probably going, "Oh geez, yeah, delusional," because that's not how it works. If you go there for a mental health crisis, you don't get to just check in and then leave. I was taken to the psychiatric floor of the hospital and I was checked in by this very nice nurse. It was late at night at this point. He gave me some snacks. He explained to me what it was going to be like living briefly on the psychiatric ward of the hospital. He told me about all the groups and the different times that we do things and meal times and things like that. And I remember being really confused. I was like, I thought I was just gonna get to lay in a hospital bed. Like, I didn't think there was this whole residential thing. And it's funny that I didn't know that, because I knew what a psych ward was. But when it came to my own experience, I was like, oh, surely that's not gonna happen to me. Surely I won't be put in there. Because there's a stigma, like I said. Even if you are the one having a mental health crisis, you still think poorly of that experience. You can be on the same level as somebody, but still try to put yourself above them. And I honestly feel like I was doing that a little bit. I was like, surely I won't be one of those people that has to go there. And sure enough, I am one of those people that has to go there. And now I don't feel that way, because I learned so much from my psych ward experience. Like I said, I just came with nothing but the clothes on my back. My recommendation, if you're watching this video because you're thinking about checking yourself into the psych ward, hopefully you're not in an active emergency if you're watching this video. But if you're wanting to know for future reference or something like that, if you have the wherewithal to pack a bag, pack a bag. Pack sweatpants or pajama pants, pack tons of clean undergarments. You won't need any socks, they do supply those. Shoes without laces, hoodies without strings, that kind of thing. It does get cold on the psych ward in my experience. They will have to go through all of your stuff to make sure you don't have anything dangerous. So that is part of it, and you don't get to keep your stuff. You don't get to just keep your stuff in your room. You have to let them go through it and make sure that there is nothing in there that could harm you, nothing that you're going to try to use to hurt yourself. And that's a big part of the psych ward, is that you don't have the freedoms that you would have in your daily life. So you're not trusted with things like shoelaces or bed sheets. Even I got a hardcover book taken away, and I asked the nurse, I was like, what could I possibly do with a hardcover book? And she was like, oh, you'd be surprised. And I guess I would be surprised, because I have no idea what that entails. But so that was the kind of the check-in process. And then I had a roommate, and I got really lucky with my roommate because we got along great. great and we made friends. She was a girl around my own age. She was really sweet and we had a lot in common. So I got really lucky in the roommate department that I got put with somebody that I could talk to, because it is a very lonely experience. If you're put there, you only have visiting hours once a day. In my experience, the phone isn't plugged in and there's twice a day that you can call. And I remember just feeling with the white walls and the white floors and everything so sterile and not homey at all. I remember I just felt so lonely. Like I wanted my family so bad. I wanted my pets so bad. I felt like I was only in there for 3 days, but it felt like months, honestly. A lot of psych wards, you do have to go to groups. So we had like musical therapy groups and like activity groups with social workers. We had spiritual groups. And the more you go to group, the better that the nurses and the doctors look at you, because there's always a tech following you around, writing down everything that you're doing. And that was something that was new for me to learn. I was like, oh, somebody is watching my every move. And the first day that I was in the psych ward, I was totally that person staring at the floor. I was just completely apathetic, nihilistic, hoodie up, staring at the floor, not wanting to do a damn thing. And then I had a little bit of a breakdown when I realized I couldn't go home when I wanted, and I just cried to one of the techs and I was like, I just miss my family. I just want to go home. I don't feel comfortable here. I'm so scared. And he told me, he was so sweet. His name was Cody. He was so sweet. He said, just keep your head up, try not to cry. You can do this. Go to groups, show them that you want to be here, show them that you want to get better, and then they'll let you go home. And so I became determined to be the best psych ward patient that there was. I went to all the groups. I tried to go to meals on time. I tried to be out in the room watching TV instead of taking naps all day like I wanted to do, to show them that I was motivated to go home. And one of the biggest things that I want to talk about with the psych ward is the people that I met. Like I said, people have a stigma about the psych ward, and even somebody as mentally ill as I am had a stigma about the psych ward and the kind of people that are there. Even those like silly Facebook tag things you'll see where it's like, oh, your first 10 people on your list are who's in the psych ward, and so is the one that licks the window, and so is the one that thinks they're a unicorn, and stuff like that. And like, I'm not saying that that's like inherently offensive, like, because I don't want to get called a special snowflake on the internet, but it does show what people think psych wards are like, when really psych wards are just full of people who need help for one reason or another. And I got to know a lot of people with different diagnoses than me, and I got to hear their stories, and hearing their stories was so important for me, because there was people that had been through things that I couldn't even fathom having been through, and yet they had such a vibrancy and they had such a will to live. And I had lost that, and I realized, seeing some of these other people fighting their battles and going through impossible things to become the best version of themselves, I realized that I wanted that too. And it was in the psych ward that I realized, hey, I do have a life and I do want to live it. And there was so many sweet people. Everybody there was going through some sort of personal crisis, and yet when I would cry, there was always somebody asking me if I was okay. There was always somebody there to offer a shoulder to lean on or to cry on, and you're just perfect strangers. And that's something that's actually kind of freeing about the psych ward, is the level of honesty. In your daily life, you're expected to not talk about these things. You're expected to keep it together and suck it up and be strong, which I think that's a very narrow definition of strong, but that's what we're expected to be. And in the psych ward, all of that goes out the window, because you're already in the psych ward, so everybody knows that you're dealing with something. So you can just talk about what you want, you can just cry freely, you can be whatever version of yourself that your mental health is making you be in that moment, and it is honestly kind of freeing. It is honestly kind of freeing. Let me know, I might do a part 2 of this psych ward video, because we're about done with the makeup. Let me spray this. The psych ward for me, to wrap this up, was so powerful, because like I said, it was the place that I realized that I did have something to live for. Because when I was stuck in there and I didn't have my husband, I didn't have my mother-in-law or my pets or the things that I was used to having, I realized how badly I wanted those things, and that I wanted to stick around to see those things through to the end, to see my relationships blossom and grow, and to be around the people that I love loved, and I realized how much I really did have, and how there's people that have less than me and they still want to be here. And that was very powerful for me. And I realized that my job and the things that I was worrying about were things that I could change. I got a tattoo immediately after I got out of the psych ward. It's a quote from Neil Hilborn in his poem The Future. I'll link it down below. Basically it says, "I saw the future, and in it I was alive." Became the biggest thing for me, is that I could picture a future for the first time in months, in more than months, honestly, because that's how I ended up where I ended up. I couldn't picture a happy future for myself. I couldn't picture a future where I was whole and content and wanted to be there, but I can now. So I think I'm gonna do a part 2 of this psych ward episode, because there's still a lot more to talk about. So if you have any questions, leave them down below and I'll try to answer them in the next one. But if you like this kind of content, please give me a like and give me a subscribe. I would really appreciate it. But also remember, I really want to leave you guys with this, that there is hope for the future and recovery is possible. And it doesn't mean that one day you wake up and things are perfect. It just means that one day you wake up and you're glad that you did, and you want again. Because when you're in that pit of despair, you don't want anything. You just want it to be over. But that's not how it's going to be forever. And just know that I'm here with you. I am always here to talk. I am always here to read your comments, and that we can do this together as one. So have a great day. Let me know what else you'd like to see in the future, and if you have any questions, and I'll see you later. Bye, Mom.